My name is Alan Bocking, and I am the president of the Molly Towell Perinatal Research Foundation. The foundation was established in 1988 as a legacy of the estate of Dr. Molly Towell, who was a pioneering clinician scientist in the field of maternal-fetal medicine. She worked at both the University of British Columbia and McMaster University in their departments of obstetrics and gynecology. The foundation is pleased to be a platinum sponsor of this year's CNPRM, and we congratulate all of the participants and organizers of this meeting during these extraordinarily challenging times. The foundation has supported the CNPRM since its inception in 2013, and before that, both the Western and Eastern perinatal meetings. At the time of her death, it was Dr. Towell's wish that young investigators and those with original and untried ideas be encouraged. Since 1990, the foundation has provided over $2 million in support for 48 investigators from 15 institutions in Canada across 7 provinces. The legacy of Dr. Towell, who contributed so much during her lifetime, continues to be extended through the work of the foundation which she created. It is now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Dan Rurak, who is a professor emeritus in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology at the University of British Columbia, who is a close friend and colleague of Dr. Towell's.
Greetings. My name is Dan Rurak, and I've been asked to give a short talk on Molly Towell, whose name features in the Molly Towell Perinatal Research Foundation. I first met Molly in 1976. She then had a faculty position in the UBC Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, which at that time was located at Vancouver General Hospital. I was familiar with her research and had returned to Vancouver from Oxford, where I had completed my PhD the year before and was now working as a research fellow there. I gave a seminar in the department and afterwards met with Molly and discussed the possibility of joining her in research when I finally returned from Oxford. This occurred 2 years later when I joined Molly in the Center for Developmental Medicine. This was a small 2-story building on West 10th Avenue across from the hospital, which housed researchers from obstetrics and gynecology and pediatrics. Molly's research primarily involved chronically instrumented pregnant sheep, but also some work on pregnant rabbits and guinea pigs. Molly's research primarily involved fetal oxygenation. When I worked with her, she was involved in studies of fetal tissue PO2 using a PO2 electrode developed by Sam Bestman in Los Angeles. I think she was one of the first investigators to measure fetal tissue PO2 on a continuous basis. She was also one of the first to provide evidence that vascular and tissue PO2 in the fetus are not relatively constant as they are in the adult, but fluctuate over short time intervals. Molly was born in England and did her undergraduate medical training and also her obstetric training there. Between these two activities, she had a couple of appointments in Canada. The one that I am most familiar with is as a surgeon was her position as surgeon on a mission boat operated by the Anglican Church, which served the many isolated communities on the coast of Vancouver Island and on the mainland coast. At that time, most of these communities did not have road access. I know of this activity because several of the many people she interacted with visited her in Vancouver while I was there. And she would bring them over to the research center so that they could see the research areas in which she worked. Aside from her research activity, Molly was also heavily involved in clinical duties and the teaching of medical students, residents, and maternal and fellows. I think that Molly was one of the first obstetricians I met who viewed the human fetus as a patient from which diagnostic information could be obtained. have to realize that when Molly trained in the 1950s and 1960s, maternal mortality during pregnancy, and particularly following labor and delivery, had substantially reduced from the high levels that it had been for most of human existence, but it was still much higher than it is today. So the focus of obstetricians at that time was more on the mother and on preventing maternal mortality. But beginning in the late 1970s, technological developments led to the ability to collect more diagnostic information from the fetus. Molly quickly adopted this technology and introduced into the department sampling of blood from the fetal scalp during labor in order to measure fetal vascular pH, continuous monitoring of fetal heart rate, and real-time observation of the fetus. In 1976, Molly published a book chapter in which included a graph which showed in healthy normal human fetuses vascular PCO2, pH, and base excess during labor measured in blood samples collected from the fetal scalp, and following delivery measured in arterial and venous blood samples collected from the umbilical cord. These variables were relatively constant during labor until shortly before delivery, when there was a rise in PCO2 and fall in pH and base excess. The variables at this point were the same as those measured in cord blood at the time of delivery. At delivery, arterial pH was about 7.25. These results demonstrated that a healthy fetus could make it through labor with only a modest fall in vascular pH, and that really only occurred shortly before delivery. At the time these results were published, no one else had provided such data, and I doubt that anybody has done it since then. I still use this graph in a graduate course that I teach on fetal and neonatal physiology and pathophysiology. Molly taught these monitoring techniques and the rationale underlying their use to obstetric residents and fellows, and also developed collaborative links between obstetricians and neonatologists in dealing with high-risk pregnancies. Molly and I worked together for just over a year. In 1979, she moved to McMaster University in Hamilton. I kept in touch with her and met her at scientific and clinical meetings, but I missed the discussions we had, mainly about fetal oxygenation and the interactions we had in the lab. And I was very grateful to inherit the research facilities and infrastructure that she had established. Molly died in 1989, but before that had established the Molly Towell Perinatal Research Foundation, which supports research in fetal and neonatal medicine. It is a fitting monument to her career. And if you want to find out more about Molly, you should go on the Molly Towell Perinatal Research Foundation website and click on About Molly, and there you'll find a description of Molly's career both in Vancouver and in Hamilton, and it was written by Fred Bryans, who was the department head at the time and a good friend of Molly's.